be in it and kind of be embodied in this space, I really invite you to do that, because I know those spaces are few and far between. And because when we're talking about healing justice work, we're actually talking about a state of being and ways of being with each other and disrupting the ways of supremacy that require us to always be producing, to be showing. So again, super, super duper way of inviting us to just be. And you know what, if you want to take hella notes, that's all good too. If you want to be typing, that's all good too. It's your space to do that. But again, just an offering. I want to share what I've sort of organized for today, and we'll see how it works or not. You'll let us know. I'm going to start with some reflection questions for all of us. So we're going to do those individually, and then we're going to go into small groups to have some discussion for maybe 15-20 minutes. We'll come back, and then I'm going to take us through what I'm going to call sort of high touch kind of frameworks around harm reduction, healing centered engagement, radical inquiry, et cetera. But I also wanted to invite us to use this time to actually do a review of what we've referred to a lot, our safety and practice protocol. Because what I also know is folks are looking for, what does this look like on the ground, in practices, in protocols? And so we have to sort of know our framework and think about our frameworks as we put in the practice. But I did want to give some time for us to also look at that and come back together. And again, as Balvinder mentioned, we're also talking about being available for one-on-ones and also office hours to go deeper into this stuff. So again, take what's useful. I hope and anticipate some stuff will be useful, but also appreciate the learning I'm going to be able to do with all of you. So before we go into the reflection, I also want to invite folks, if you want to come off of mute, just so we can hear some voices, to say hello, good morning, do a shout out, take a breath we can all hear if you'd like to. Because I know Zoom is very flat and disembodied, and everything we're talking about is our embodiment.
Hello.
Morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Kelly, you okay?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, we just needed to make sure we heard your voice. So after seeing you in the chat, I'm sure you're not still choking. So take care of each other. Okay, and so we're gonna go right into this. And so as if you were at the last session, we kind of just, we start with sort of the reflection from very much heart space, spirit space, that can also be very tender. So whatever feelings might come up for you, those are the right feelings. Notice them, we invite them. And also please continue to take care of yourself through this. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to sort of consider these on your own. If you want to go off screen, if you want to write, just however you want to do this. So the first question, just take a minute to consider, where do you cultivate healing, restoration, ease for yourself?
So cute.
Where do you cultivate healing, restoration, ease for yourself? Or with who? I'm going to move us to the next question, but certainly we're not leaving this first question. This is a constant. But the second question, how does your work cultivate healing, restoration, ease? And you can define work however you'd like, but thinking about the work that you do. How does your work cultivate healing, restoration, ease? I'm going to move us to the last reflection question. And again, after some individual reflection, we're going to go into small groups, and the tech team, maybe if we could set up for groups of 4, that'd be great. So the last question I have for all of us is, how does your work, our work, get in the way of a restoration, of healing, of ease? How does our work get in the way of healing, restoration, ease? I'm going to go off screen and I'll put these questions in the chat. I'm going to stop share. I'm not going off screen. So these are questions that we can continue to ask ourselves, our organizations. We're going to take some time with each other. Before I go into small groups, I also want to acknowledge the differentiation and sort of power and positional power that we hold. So myself as an associate director, as a co-founder of RYSE, for me to answer those questions has a different kind of potency and place of sort of power than if it was a program coordinator, right? Or if we were in the same space. So I also want to acknowledge those differentials, and that actually impacts the degree which we might feel safe or comfortable sharing. So I'm only going to ask that you share what you feel comfortable sharing, but again, acknowledging that. And for those of us who hold positional power in our organizations in the space, to be mindful about what it means to share, to take up space in that. So again, hold it gently, but hold it as we move into breakout rooms. So can we do groups of 4 for about 15 minutes? Is that possible, team?
Yep, that sounds good. I can start now, and everyone should be receiving a notification.
Recording in progress. Folks are coming back. Want to invite folks who want to share in the chat out loud. Appreciate my small group, really bringing it back to the land and other sentient beings that really bring us restoration and healing. And so, yeah, just do folks want to share out loud or in the chat, just sort of what sort of came up for you in this reflection, your own reflection within the group. Again, please share your experience, and maybe don't speak for others. You can share what you learned, what you heard. But yeah, and I see some stuff coming in the chat. See, good talk, y'all. Sorry you got cut off, Jesse.
Hey.
Jesse, do you wanna continue?
Oh,
I was just
I
saying.
did.
Like,
That's why I was like, wait. I was like, no.
I was-
Terry, do you want to go? I saw Jesse and Terry. Okay, come off at the same time.
So I was just mentioning, like, the more I like lean into my indigeneity, the more I get involved with medicine and like ceremonies and stuff, the more successful I become in the white man's world. And that there's a conflict that happens where I gotta have like the balance and like the knowledge to know when I could be my authentic self and when I have to fit into a box that really isn't made for me. And so like there's like that constant contradiction of my life that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. I see, just want to thank you to the group I was in for your words and input. Appreciate y'all. It's great meeting other MSWs. Good to take a moment and do a macro check-in. Also good to give others who are overwhelmed some encouragement. Definitely. Good to hear wisdom from Southern California folks. All right. While we were all from varied backgrounds and completely different parts of the state, we shared commonality in our restoration practices and value from our EYC work. Any others want to say anything?
I can share from our group. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go first? Or I
Okay.
guess I'm already talking at this point. So our group talked a lot about how like it's really easy to kind of forget to eat and like take breaks and kind of check in with ourselves because we do such hard work and we're all so passionate that we kind of, we forget to set those boundaries and works, which leads a lot to like increase of stress and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool because it was cool, but not cool because we had a collective experience. But, it's definitely good to bring that to the forefront and kind of realize like maybe we should take a little bit more care of ourselves.
Mhm. Thank you. And is it Yanel? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Yanel, thank you.
Hi, folks. I was also going to add that I think the comment there that I saw was that while we love the work that we actually got to do, I think it was everything that was tying to like white supremacy that like really bogged us down, whether that was perfectionism, whether that was like our ability to produce like capitalism, or whether that was even just like different code switching that we had to do that like really felt like we had to compartmentalize ourselves or also conform to like succeed in this concept. And so I think we talked a lot about how like while the work we did was healing, it was like all these other nuances and dynamics and expectations that is related to white supremacy and perfectionism that really bogged down on our own healing, even though the work was something we enjoyed.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, the systems get in the way. So we got to get them out the way. Thank you. See others in the chat. I'm also going to invite if anyone would like to read the chat comments, just so it's not my voice dominating. I also honestly,
I just would like to add to what Lee said, because, at the part about how the work gets in the way, I was focusing on my own organization, but you brought up a good point about the systems and how we really need to be more aware of that we're working in an oppressed state under colonialism still, and we forget that when we're doing such busy work and always trying to keep on top of this idea of perfectionism and all that. And we talked a lot about nature and getting in touch with earth and being grounded more. And I think you also brought up just if that was the way we were measuring our success and our deliverables and our grant reports, you know, how much more healing that would be rather than what it's focused on.
Thank you, Jessica. Would someone be willing to read some of the chat comments again so my voice isn't, it's dominating because I know I'm presenting, but maybe over dominating. Anyone?
I can read them for you if you like.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. I'll start up at after the last one you read. So the part about eating, I thought I was the only one who forgets to eat. There were a couple of agreements on that. I appreciated our group's focus on gratitude and reminder that we are all members of a team. We can lean on each other and laugh along the way. Lots of agreement with that one. We talked about how we expect perfection from ourselves. Lilo said something great, which is really great. You are still worthy when you aren't perfect. Yes. And then there were a few loves for that one as well. Great statement.
Thank you, Karen.
Sure.
Thank you. So invite us, let's take some breaths in gratitude for our reflection and our sentiments and our thoughts, for sharing. Something that I really have to try to remember is, you know, like my success sort of in these systems is not my liberation, our success with these systems. So I'm really good at writing proposals and grant report. Like I'm good at that. I know how to talk about it, but that's like also being able to, you know, speak to systems that honestly don't give a shit, and not because there aren't people who care, but really it's fundamentally how they've been designed. And reform won't change the fundamental nature of oppression and dehumanization that these systems purport. But that said, it's like, I'm not going to get my own liberation, my spiritual, psychic, political liberation from being able to show up the way these systems need me to contort and conform. That said, we also know we are here, we have chosen to be in service to our communities through the formation of nonprofits, you know, of varying degrees. So we've also signed up to sort of work in these systems we have. And so our opportunity and our obligation is always to stay in that grappling place around what it means to be in this work. And so that's why I know for RYSE, we see ourselves as part of movements. We can't be one program, one organization. We need connection and relationship. You know, knowing that we are a 501c3, we're a tax shelter for the rich. Got to keep it real as well. So, but we get to do all of that. And even just naming where we are can offer some reprieve. So we're going to move into kind of the next section, but I just want to sort of acknowledge, like, also there might be just some heaviness, a lot of things percolating, or, you know, just whatever is going on for you, just to, again, acknowledge it, because I think also in the work, we don't actually get to sort of acknowledge where we are, because we are stewards, holders, responsible for teams, people, etc. Just take that moment. Also want to invite if there's any burning comment that folks want to share. I just saw some folks come off mute, so I just want to make sure we're not missing anyone. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is take us through some slides. You know, in planning for these sessions, we talked about really sort of offering our learnings and sort of our praxis around areas of like harm reduction, like what does it mean, radical inquiry, et cetera. So I hope that it's helpful to share, but really want to then get to all of us having some time individually to review how it actually looks like in some of our organizational protocol and practices. So let's see how this goes. And I really appreciate real-time feedback. So if it's like, can we we really actually keep talking about this or need this? I can't promise we can meet all the needs, but I certainly can acknowledge all the needs. So feedback is really helpful. Let me share this. Okay. I'm not going to go over what RYSE is or who we are, but happy to do that. But I do feel like it's important as we share kind of our key praxes and frameworks that we also share how we as an organization articulate and define trauma and healing and distress. And so we really see it as historical, structural, institutional, systemic, as much as it is, you know, familial, interpersonal, and embodied. So I'm going to ask if someone would be willing to read either all of what's on sort of the left side, or maybe read a few of the tiers out loud, starting from the top.
I can read. This is Vincent from Duluth.
Thank you, Vincent.
And I actually kind of, because of what caught my eyes from an indigenous perspective too, I would say genocide and colonization and then the enslavement. Because I think indigenous populations are still kind of, that narrative is still needing to be remedied in terms of American history doesn't just start at slavery, it starts at genocide and the lack of acknowledgement and the dehumanization of the indigenous peoples. But
thank you.
The economy and where we're at is based on, you know, slavery and all those, of course, and we need a lot of reckoning to happen. But nation building by enslavement, genocide, colonization, economic exploitation, resource extraction, white supremacy, patriarchy, systemic subjugation of BIPOC by interacting policies and systems, capitalism's broken treaties. I would also add what is it, extermination and erasure of tribal identity, but also tribes have termination policies, which actually wiped out tribal nations, saying they were not a tribe anymore. So that's how a lot of that happened. War on drugs, mass incarceration, criminalization of poverty and survival, anti-immigrant imperialist policies, redlining and gentrification, climate violence, harmful media narratives, and just the first, I think, sake of time too, atmospheric distress that includes interpersonal, family, community, violence and exposure, sexual exploitation, gender violence, displacement, lack of safe passage and spaces, lack of green spaces, underinvestment, over surveillance. And I think back in the day, because I'm a Gen Xer, you know, it's environmental racism essentially, which we all know about, which, you know, with the environment, you know, where we still have pipelines and sacred sites being demolished, even sacred sites for the sake of ski lodges, mountain bike paths. That happens with the indigenous populations in different areas as well. Embodiment and expression of distress through personal traumatic experiences, bullying, gender violence, family system stressors, ACEs, numbing, shame and blame, and for sure, epigenetics.
Thank you, Vincent. And thank you for also offering how we continue to really be explicit around these interacting layers. So definitely gonna make some adjustments. So I just wanna, it's a lot to take in. If there's stuff in the chat, I can't read it. So if someone would be willing to mind the chat, that would be great. So again, I'm offering this, you know, as something that as organizations, we've actually gone through this as an organization to even plot out personally, mapping our own lives, mapping 3 generations of our families on this. And I can offer you the sort of reflection questions we've had around that. But again, as an organization, as a grantee of EYC, which is to sort of prevent substance use with young people, for us, and I think we've shared this and you know this, for us, that we actually need to get beyond changing behaviors and stopping behaviors and only centering that and not really looking at the need and the conditions and the structures that facilitate these behaviors. And so again, for us, we have to be clear about when we're talking about trauma and distress, how are we naming it? Because how we name it is how we address it. And as you can see, there's very little around behavior on this. And so on the other side, I want to share how we really look at the way we address the trauma and distress through liberation and healing. And again, this is an iterative. We invite you to also add to it. Again, take what's useful, but I'm going to ask if someone could read these tiers out loud.
I can read it. Oh, someone else.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Jessica.
So liberation and healing, history in the history, legacy, and structure for collective liberation by truth and reconciliation, reparations, redistribution, open borders, no borders, multiracial solidarity, gender justice, and just transitions. Within systems and institutions, lead with love and justice by healing-centered and restorative practices, listening campaigns, collective care, identity of affirming, adaptive, responsive, and proximate land and power sharing, nothing about us without us. Within community in place, we build beloved community by radical inquiry, popular education, and culture building, celebration and affirmation, healing spaces, land acknowledgement, arts and expression, base and power building. And with an individual and interpersonal, honoring resilience and fortitude by listening and validating, processing, integrating personal traumatic experiences, family healing, tailored supports and opportunity, loving connections to each other and the land, loving predictable structure.
Thank you, Jessica. So on this side, again, for RYSE as an organization, we work to identify, activate our work across all these levels. And what we also know just from the time we've had on this call, that so much of what's on this side is happening and being held and activated by folks in this space. And we don't always get to see how we're connected and how we're doing this, and that we need all of the ways we're showing up in healing for ourselves and for each other, knowing we're up against so much. So let me stop there and just see if there's any sort of just thoughts, sentiments about just seeing our interacting layers.
I'd like to say something.
Thank you.
First, I just want to say I'm a visual learner. This is just helpful for me. And I noticed that, sorry, my kids may be fighting in the background like they've been doing lately. Hey, thank you. So, you know, when it was on the information that you had on the left side at first, you know, I find myself daily like filtering, you know, when I'm angry about something, because typically I start my day with listening to news, and of course I'm just like, you know, and it's typically at that institutional level. And so throughout the day, it's like filtering, where am I feeling frustrated? So then I know how to respond. What's interesting to me is, you know, and I walk that red road too, you know, so thank you for that, those Indigenous teachings right now as well. And so that's helpful, walking that red road. And what's interesting too is looking at these examples of liberation and healing. I feel like when you practice it, people around you, if they're not used to it or they've never seen it or witnessed it, all of a sudden, like, I don't know, I've been called certain things, like I'm just, and they want to fight it, you know what I'm saying? And because it doesn't seem normal. And so it's that reminder of, we've been indoctrinated since we were babies, right? So of course it feels abnormal, right, to everybody else, and it makes them want to question it and not want to go that route because they're so used to this, you know, this foundation of capitalism and those strategies and those mechanisms. And so to combat that, like, that's also another challenge, to know that, to stick with it too, because it's easy for someone when everyone else around you is like, I don't know about that. So in that moment, you could be like, okay, well, then I'm just going to be quiet and do it, you know, anyway, versus like, no, I'm going to stick to this strategy because I know that that's love and that's healing. And it's the only way we're going to get to that vision that we all have of what community could look like and what structures could look like. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Maria. And I'll just say, I like hearing the kids. I know it might not be what you want, but I'll just say that's what it's about, right? We should be able to be in spaces where there is that noise and that interaction and iteration and way of being. But yeah, I mean, again, the constant grappling, the navigating, the like, how much do I give something attention right now when there's all this other stuff? Like we're in that constantly, but we don't even get to acknowledge it, right? The weight of the macro, micro, meta aggressions that are happening all the time. And we have to show up and go to this meeting and do all this. And again, I'm saying this as someone who sets a lot of meetings, who runs a lot of meetings. So it's not to shame or blame, but it is to lift up like the things that often get unnameable. And well, let me stop there. Just others wanted to sort of ask, and we'll send all of this out so you have it as well. Just other thoughts, just wanted to share. Okay. That does actually remind me of something I can share just from our vantage point. We have one of our new staff on our clinical team just joined us about 2-3 months ago. And at our last check-in, she shared with me that she realized, that she's been holding a lot of anxiety around how we do work at RYSE. And she said, because I don't believe it. I don't believe that we do actually healing centered work. I don't believe that, because she's like, even though we're doing it, she's like, I don't trust that it's gonna last, or I don't trust that it's actually gonna be like I'm gonna be allowed to actually talk about white supremacy, like in my clinical sessions, right? Like am I gonna get in trouble? And so for me, as a supervisor, I'm not a clinical supervisor, but a program supervisor. And again, in my position in the organization, really for me, it was that aha moment of how important it is to sort of make sure there's space to share that. The anxiety around actually being somewhere where you want to be, coming from toxic systems, and that space that creates some of that anxiety and uncertainty and how it plays out. Because then it allows me to give more grace and have a runway of let's actually name this when we talk about it. And I'll say honestly, there were moments where over the last months, I'm like, I don't know why there's anxiety. We talked about this, right? Like, so it's again, like there's no sort of magic, here's how you do it. And this is just how it goes. And then it's done. It is that constant co-regulating, relating inquiry with each other. And again, always understanding if we have positional power, we have more responsibility to the relationship. So I just wanted to share that as an example, especially Maria, as you raised that up, like not everyone, it's like even folks that want it aren't necessarily ready. So how do we continue to make space? Because I know I wasn't ready, right? People had to sort of be patient with me, give me room, let me make mistakes, let me act out to be able to come into it. So yeah, just wanted to share that as a very specific recent example in our organization. Okay. How are folks doing? How are we doing? Like, can we take like just a breath, stretch? You want to sort of move wherever you are? Yeah, should we maybe, how about we do like 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and then I'm going to figure out how we're going to come back. So wanted to open it up. Just again, there's the reflection questions if you want to respond to those or anything else. We are definitely not bound by these questions and certainly want to hear what might be helpful in terms of next steps. But before we get to that, just hearing sort of, how it was to review and your conversations. And I want to maybe invite folks maybe who haven't spoken out loud yet to start off, but people can feel free to also put stuff in the chat.
So For me, I definitely resonated with this document, and we were kind of wondering what the audience is and how was it created. Just because we we actually do hire some of our members to be part of our staff too. And then one thing that I've realized, it's really hard with boundaries when they are part of like youth members and it's like volunteer work and it's all these things. And then it goes to like staff, it becomes a little bit, it's hard to maintain boundaries with the other youth and it's hard to maintain boundaries with the staff.
Yeah.
So to me, I thought it was an amazing document to have and it was very in depth and even a lot of the things we do, like, but it's in writing, right? So I just wanted to know like, was it created with youth? Who's the audience? And then also like, when is this presented? Is it like at orientation with new staff members begin? And those are kind of the things I was thinking of.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriela. I can maybe speak quickly because I want to hear from others. But this is a document, it was requested by staff. And I had shared in the small group I was in. When it was brought to us, and this was because, you know, there's incidents, there's things going on, folks want to stay consistent, not sure what to do. I was like, really, we need like a word by word of how we do this. So I want to admit I was resistant to it, or maybe just hesitant, but also understand we need to make sure staff have what they need to feel like they can really be in the work in a way. So it was created at the request of staff for staff. So it's not a document, like we don't share it at member orientation. There's parts of it like the house agreements that, you know, are part of our new member orientation. We have other kinds of ways of being, I know there's a section in there about, we talk about what it means to be near peer staff and understanding that there are sort of, especially when you move from being a youth member to a RYSE staff member, we have to be mindful of the blurred boundaries. There is transition time that needs to happen. Those of us that are not near peer staff, like myself, also have to be mindful of both supporting. So like, again, what this document does is it helps to lay out some clarity, but also then it's connected to so many other things, how we onboard staff, what are the trainings we need to do, right? You can see from how we do safety, like we need staff who can sort of show up when these things happen, right? So also it helps us be clear about when we put out job announcements, what are we really looking for? What do we need? So I'll stop there, but again, I know we're probably gonna have office hours at some point and can always follow up one-on-one, but it is for staff specifically. See, Gabby had a question. Yeah, so young people are the house agreements, and we're actually updating them right now. Those are created by young people, and we've actually had our near peer staff kind of help vet this document. This document gets shared at all. We do refreshers at all our staff development weeks. We do those 3 times a year, but when we need to, you know, sort of do reminders and refreshers, we do that as well. And it continues to be updated. We run scenarios as well when we need to around situations. As you can see, there's some specifics we had. Everything you see is based on sort of experience and situations we've had. I see another question in the chat, which I can respond to, cupcaking. But are there other questions? Like, does anyone want to say anything out loud? Or does anyone want to explain cupcaking?
Hi, this is Madison. We had the same the same kind of confusion. We're like, what's cupcaking? Is this a new term? Are we out of our generation kind of thing? And then one of our group members so kindly explained it was almost like a PDA thing, like buttering your muffin. So I thought that was interesting. So if anybody wants to add to that, but yeah, I was like, well, I don't know what cupcaking is.
Thank you, Madison. I hadn't heard buttering your muffin. Just love all the new terminology, or maybe it's not new, maybe I'm just getting wind of it. And we'll say cupcaking, we opened our doors in 2008. So our planning was sort of those years before. Cupcaking was a very common term around PDA, so public displays of affection. And so as you can see, like we have gone through an iteration of initially it was like no cupcaking, right? And that's what young people really felt like was important. But over time, as we built our culture and as we sort of became more of home, family, a safe space, that has shifted as we started to understand, you know, what it means to do healing work, adolescent development work, the importance of connection, of safe touch, right? We had to rethink that. So again, we don't stay stuck in sort of things we just decided just because we decided them. We learn new things, conditions change, so we make those changes. But cupcaking is, you know, hugging up on each other, maybe more than hugging up on each other. And so we keep that term in there because it is a term at least RYSE young people sort of still speak to. But if we learn new terms, we'll put those in as well. The other reflections, questions?
We were wondering from our discussion, if you could share maybe some examples of, you know, going through these policies and how it went. Especially we were talking about, you know, with youth showing up with weapons or drugs and alcohol. How has that gone? You know, taking these steps.
Yeah.
What have you found has worked?
Yeah. Yeah. So young people given, we can't account for their safe passage to and from RYSE. So for us to then demand that they come into a space with no tool to protect themselves, like that feels not aligned with our values as we want to be belonging. That said, we also know that it's important that when we find out there's a weapon in the space, there's a few ways we have to look at it. It's like, did a young person let a staff know? Did a staff person find out? Do other members know? So we need to like figure out like who's in the sort of sphere of knowledge and experience in this. Oftentimes it is, oh, I just carry it on me all the time. It fell out of my bag or it's showing out of my pocket. And what it is really a conversation with staff and staff knowing like, look, like, yeah, we want you here. Okay, now that we've seen this, we need to put your bag in a locker. You know, while you're here, come check in with me when you're leaving. I'll make sure you get it. We've had young people actually in an anger management, what we call breaking the frame of anger management, because we actually believe we should be angry. Young person who sort of took out a switchblade during the course of the group. So we stopped the group, we paused it. 2 people always run a group. They went and got, I can't remember, you know, I think a director, right? And so, but we kept everyone in the space and it's important to name like that's outside of sort of like the norms of the space, but we're not going to actually banish somebody from the space, right? If the intention that was, I'm taking this out because I'm about to go harm someone in the group, that's a different kind of intervention. And so it does require like staff really being able to kind of assess, never doing stuff alone, right? Like being in space alone like that. But those are some examples that I can give. But what I will also say is that, again, it goes back to you know, staff have to have a certain kind of like stamina and steadiness to be in this work. And again, then as an administrator in the organization, I have to be responsible for making sure that staff are resourced and taken care of to be able to be in the space. So again, one incident, you can see what it requires to really be a fully healing centered organization. It can't just be the staff doing all the work and then there's nothing around it so it's mental health days, it's restoration week, it's, you know what, you actually handled some stuff that was really intense. You don't need to worry about, you know, go just take the rest of the day. It's still a work day. You're working because actually decompressing, it needs to be part of your work. But, you know, we can't have like in a manual for every single thing. That's part of it. So are those helpful examples?
Yeah, that is. Thank you.
I can also share with substance use, you know, I mean, smoking weed is young people say, that's how I sort of can, decompress. I can numb out, not have to deal with what's in front of me all the time. Should adults do that? I mean, so what it can look like is a young person, I mean, this has happened before, walks into RYSE, the whole building then smells like weed, right? So some part of what we have to assess is what's the impact on the space, right? Young person might come in, hi, there's no impact on the space. We may or may not notice something, right? It really is about how are we attuned to what's going on. When the whole building starts to smell like weed, who has the relationship with that young person? Have that conversation. Glad you're here, want you here, want to share this, want to keep you here. Can I give you another t-shirt? Do you need to go home and change? What do we need to do so we can actually keep you engaged? So it's never about shaming or blaming, but it's also about being real. We got young folks that, have to do community service hours, and if their probation officer comes in and smells it, like all of that's going on. So we keep it real with young people in a way that doesn't burden them more, but that is about meeting them where they are and moving with them. So that's an example around substance use. Again, what's the impact on the person, the space, et cetera?
Thank you.
Terry, do you want to, I don't want to call you, but I think I don't quite understand in the chat, so I want to make sure I'm attending to the sentiment you've raised.
Sure. So what I was saying is I appreciate the way you guys approach the young people. It seems like you give like second chances, third chances, fourth chances, like you don't, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but anyway. And so I was saying, I feel a little convicted because I'm like, after I've gone back and forth with a young person, like 4 times, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Yeah. Because I got a lot going on in my life and I don't have a whole lot of time to devote to the dumb stuff. But on the other end, I do appreciate how y'all like, no, let's talk, let's do this, let's figure this out, let's do this. I love it. And I that's what's making me feel a little convicted. Mm-hmm. And the last time we met, I went back to my job and I was like, hey, y'all, I think we need to give him another chance. I was on the EYC thing and no, we got to give him another chance. And so we did that with one of the young people, and it's the same young person I'm talking about. And now I'm irritated. And I was like, yeah, I can't do it no more. And so now I'm looking at this like, dang, now I feel like going back and saying, okay, dang, we need to give him another chance. I don't know how I feel, but I do feel a little convicted and it's probably just because I have a lot of other stuff going on. And then I have a low tolerance when I see kids not doing what I want them to do. And it is not about, and where I don't know. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
I feel like I so appreciate you sharing that. That is so real. It is. So we're not here because this is easy. But what I will say is that, like, it can't just be you being the only one who's like, we got to give second chances, right? This has to be an organizational commitment and practice so that you are not getting worn out. You can't be the only one. And that's why, like, in our work at RYSE, we're like, everyone's responsible. Yeah, we have different roles. We have different ways. Young people are going to relate to staff differently. So who's the best staff to engage? But all of us are responsible for it. So if I'm not the one connecting with the young person and I'm in struggle, I'm supporting the staff who are. What do you need? Do you need to vent with me? Like, how can I support you? Do I need to make some calls for you? Like, what's my role in that if I'm not directly engaging? The other thing I'll say is that we've had young people come in and say, I'm cool, I don't want to change my shirt, right? Like, I don't want a conversation. Well, then we're going to invite you to take a break for the day and come back tomorrow. So it's not like there's not parameters or boundaries. So that's like that. I also want to be clear on that. Like, it's okay, it's a choice point, right? Like, that's also the thing, but a choice point within the context of, we want you here. Maybe today's not going to work. Okay, look, can we check in tomorrow? But again, if that was only on one staff or one program, that's not going to work organizationally. It's not going to be sustainable. It has to be sort of part of the culture of the organization. We've had young people who we've had to put on, go on break for 6 months. And it was the hardest thing because we're like, shit, we're supposed to be here for them. We should be able to know how to deal with this. But it was outside of the bounds of our capacity. And we had to admit that as an organization. What I will say is every young person who's gone on a break has come back. And it's not because, again, like we're like following up every day. It is about being in that relationship, being as clear as we can, but also saying, okay, here's the line. We can't actually do this anymore. So Terry, yeah, if it's like 3-4 times, like then it's like, okay, it's just time to take a break. But, okay, I just saw your comment.
Yeah, I'm gonna put myself on a break. I'm gonna put myself on probation.
You know what? That's real. Sometimes, yeah, we need to be able to go on break, right? Sometimes it's like 3 situations in a row. I can't be having the same staff members tending to that. No. And if it is always those staff members, that's an organizational issue. It's not an issue just about the staff members or about the young people. That's about the adults. So I just really appreciate you bringing that up and keeping it real. This shit's hard. And this is the shit, again, our systems, our funders don't understand that it's that piece around, we want to be in a place where we feel loved, belonging, we want to be around other folks. And sometimes we act hella out of pocket because the shit's hard. We got a lot of stuff going on. And so this is also like, it's so important we share this with each other, that this is hard and then we don't pretend like we got it figured out. But what's going to help us move through this is being in relationship, keeping it real, keeping it tender, staying strident to disrupt supremacy, but showing up for each other. There's a question about offering, with young people, if they're on break. So sometimes it is like, if it's a week, it might be daily check-ins. So we figure out a plan with the members. So when a member's on break, there still might be a plan for connection and engagement. It really depends, again, what's the situation, what's the need, what's the resource, what are we able to do? So certainly, and more than often we'll tell members if there's an emergency, like, yes, call us. It might mean you can't come back on site quite yet, but we'll figure out how to connect and support. Yeah, we all need those breaks, man. EYC probation. Well, think about these networking calls. Like, is this a place we have breaks? What does that look like? That's the piece we get to sort of also figure out and decide. So I know we have about 10 minutes or 9 minutes. So just want to really appreciate this conversation. We can keep it going. Next steps as we think about, I know, again, RYSE might do some office hours, just what might be helpful, if anything. But also I just really enjoy being able to chop it up. I feel very restored, I have to say, in this conversation.
I just want to say thank you for putting this together and sharing these resources with us. This is certainly helpful. I know at our center, we're going to be reestablishing in-person groups and activities come the new year. And, we really want to go into it the right way. And I think what you shared today really kind of sets the tone and the foundation that we want to move in. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be doing staff development the second week after we come back from break. And one of the things that we're going to do is we do every 12 to 18 months a refresher on adolescent brain development, adolescent development in the context of distress. So we're going to do that again, but also really folks who are going to come in and train us really what does it mean in this time of COVID and the pandemic. So again, how are we understanding those pieces of the work as it informs our policies, our practice, our programs, et cetera. And again, certainly our safety and practice. So that is something we're going to do. And if we are thinking we might want to offer it to sort of our larger community in the springtime as well. So if and when we get there, we'll definitely make sure it gets out to this group. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to stay on until 12:30. I mean, that's the thing, you know, get 7 minutes to do whatever we want. That's all good too. I trust there'll be follow-up where it needs to be. Thank you for all the chats. I don't know if EYC team, is there anything you wanted to share before we close out?
Just echoing the sentiments in the chat and what folks have shared, just really grateful for this partnership, Paul, and with your team at RYSE. You know, I know that it's a work in progress, you know, the work that you all are doing and, you know, where all of our funded partners are at as well. And so, you know, for some of the organizations, I know when you might be looking at this document or these conversations, you might be like, okay, we're kind of far from there. We've got a lot of ways to go, but just remember that, you know, we're just making steady progress on all of this. And if there is any ways that we can support here at the center, please do feel free to reach out. You know, one of the components to this funding is also the center being a technical assistance provider. And so we'll be sharing more about the series that we'll be having throughout the 2022 year in January. Don't want to overwhelm folks right now or as the year comes to a close, because we know there's a lot going on. So just wanted to be mindful of that as well. But other than that, we'll, again, as Paul mentioned, we'll stay on for the next 6 minutes or so if folks have any questions, any comments, and then, you know, if you would like to go ahead and have these last 5 or 6 minutes for yourselves, feel free to do that too.